Afternoon. My name is Emily Cass. I am the Chesapeake Chapter President, and I want to welcome you to our webinar, Telework and Childcare with Robin Mack. A couple housekeeping items. You will be placed on mute during the presentation, and at one point we're going to have something interactive where you will be placed on unmute. This presentation is being recorded, and it will be available on our webpage just in case you want to review it after today. A little bit about our presenter. We have Robin Mack. She is the CEO of Mack Global LLC and has been a telework consultant for a Telework VA program under the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation for the past 5 years. In her earlier years, she spearheaded the Virginia Department of Taxation's Telework Initiative, earning the 2008 Governor's Technology Award for the Best Telework Initiative in the state for public sector and the 2008 Digital Government Achievement Award. Currently, she does serve as the secretary of our ACT Telework Council. Robin, do you want to go ahead and take over?
Thank you so much. Well, hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started on this important topic about managing telework and parenting. And so for our agenda, we're going to cover a few items, which is childcare tips, telework best practices, tips on ergonomics, workspace and technology, and local resources for your telework program. So we're going to go ahead and start, but let's first discuss where we currently are. So it's been almost 6 months since we were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we were forced into an emergency change, and there was really no time for preparation. And as a result, we implemented unprecedented telework as we've never really seen before in this country. And as the country is going through the transition phases now of trying to get back to work and school, in some ways, our current situation is even more stressful than the beginning of the pandemic because things are constantly changing every day, and it's still very chaotic as far as going back to school, going back to the workplace, and it all contributes to high anxiety levels. On top of the concerns that we have with childcare and our jobs, we're also worried about, our health and the health of our loved ones, the economy, our finances, and lots more. Our new normal is currently filled with the uncertainty and lots of uncertainty, and that's unsettling for many of us. I actually just heard yesterday, as colleges are gearing up to return to school, that UNC, after 1 week, has reversed their decision and is moving to completely online due to the spread of COVID. And unfortunately, I see other universities starting to head in the same direction. So it seems that we will be dealing with this situation for some time to come. And if you think it's unsettling for us adults, think about how our children are being impacted. Our children have been exposed to these stressful life changes just as we have. I read a recent article by Dr. Mary Gleason, who is a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and she mentioned that past community crises, such as Hurricane Katrina and Sandy, the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and mass shootings, have shown us the long-lasting impact of such events on some children's mental health, along with their emotional and behavioral development. And these problems can affect 1 in 6 children with issues like anxiety and sleep disorders. However, she said the good news is that for most children, they won't develop mental health issues, but the memory of COVID-19 will shape their worldview in the same way the Great Depression shaped how many of our grandparents and great-grandparents lived. They will remember it. They might overstock on toilet paper or be overly cautious about spreading germs, but it won't interfere with their development or their long-term relationships. So that's great news. But from my perspective, when your kids remember this time, they will never forget how you made them feel. So it's important that we constantly make them feel safe, secure, and supported during this time above all else. So with that said, I am really sorry to report that there is no miraculous wand that can put your children in a trance for a few hours, or put you in a trance for a few hours for that matter. One size does not fit all in trying to resolve this situation with the impact of telework and working with children. And so it depends on the age group, the personality, and the interest of your children. In terms of some of these suggestions that I'm going to offer today, they may be great for some of you and your children's age group. Others may be completely irrelevant. So everyone's plans may differ based on various factors. So I had to use this disclaimer that everyone hates, which is results will vary. But regardless of the age of your children, these tips will help you move in the right direction, and planning ahead is your best friend right now. You all know by now that the situation you're in currently isn't going away anytime soon. And in order to deal with the situation effectively, you have to have a tactical strategy. So imagine yourself right now with some type of superhero outfit on, looking toward the ceiling and getting ready to take action, because that's what it's going to take to get you through this. And it's about adjusting that strategy as you go along, fine-tuning the processes while you're trying to figure out what is going to work best for your household. Manage the situation. For the best outcome for your household, it's important that you take charge. If I were to ask you, are you in control of the situation, or is the situation controlling you? What would your answer be? I know it feels like some days you've got it figured out, and other days you're flying by the seat of your pants. But things won't change if you don't take charge and work to manage the situation. Communication is key. If age appropriate, ask your kids about their plans. This is a great time to find out from them some things that they would like to explore or learn more about. If kids are doing something they're genuinely interested in, it will make your life much easier. Involve them in this process of finding out appropriate activities. Get creative. Think outside the box and brainstorm with the family. I know that sounds exhausting right now, considering everything else that we're going through. But somehow families are finding ways to be more creative now than they ever have been, especially, since we were sheltered in place for, such a significant amount of time. You want to maintain a routine. This will be a common theme throughout this webinar, because it's so important, and it's also probably the most difficult task to do, particularly with young children. But it's important enough that you need to keep working at it, because when there isn't some sort of routine involved as a teleworker or as a parent working with children during this time, it can definitely be constant chaos. You also want to talk to your employer. Some of us make the mistake of not communicating openly with our employers. We think, well, they won't understand. I don't want to bring my personal problems into the workplace. I need to figure this out on my own, and the list goes on. I understand that we don't want our family life to be viewed as some type of crutch, but we are in a pandemic, and this is not business as usual. Your employer or supervisor should know your challenges as it relates to childcare, and perhaps a solution can be approved for you that may help your situation. Maybe your schedule can be adjusted, or tasks that make things a little easier for you. So definitely have that conversation and keep them up to date with what's going on as situations change within your household, as going back to school is getting ready to come up. You want to be flexible. I know I've been telling you to maintain a routine, take charge, and now I'm telling you to be flexible. Some of you are like, look, which one is it? What do you want me to do? Picture yourself on that balancing beam, because it's both. In order to effectively manage the situation, it might mean that you need to just let some things go. The days of everyone fitting nicely into their little box and doing what they're supposed to do is just not the case right now. And we need to stop trying to make it fit when it doesn't and be flexible when we need to be. Children need structure. So a schedule will definitely help them to stay focused while allowing you to focus on the work that you need to get done in a teleworking capacity. For younger age groups, try to schedule activities throughout the day that last maybe 1 to 2 hours. Coloring, fun games, reading time, arts and crafts, writing stories, letters to family members, etc. Just as you have a designated workspace, your child should have a designated area just for them to work or play while you work. As you're planning your schedule and activities for your children, remember that learning can be in many forms, and it's not always in a take-home packet. Kids can learn science while playing outside or planting a garden, fractions while cooking, spelling and handwriting while writing letters or making a grocery list. So be creative when you're thinking of things that will occupy their time. At the end of the day or week, try to provide some type of incentive or reward if your child has done well. Remember, this is not easy for them. And if they have something to look forward to, they might be more motivated. So fortunately, everyone is facing similar challenges right now with childcare. So if a kid is peeking in on a web conference or yelling mommy in the background, and it's been providing some much needed comic relief at this time, don't worry about it. Just this morning, I had a situation where my daughter, she's just starting college and she's attending online. And she's actually was at her grandparents' house, and she was starting her class, and her grandmother peeked in and walked in and was trying to whisper in her ear, and she's on a big 6-foot screen in her classroom where everyone can see her, and she's trying to tell her grandmother, I'm actually on class. And it was a big mess. She was mortified, but and I think like her grandmother was in pajamas. It was just a mess. But these things are happening, you know, these things are taking place. So we have to sometimes go with the flow. We have to know that these things are going to happen, and we're just human. And so sometimes we just have to exhale and let it be. So you want to try to do a weekly overview if you can before the week begins, and plan out the week, because you know schedules, particularly with larger families, are all over the place. So if you can do this maybe on a Sunday, go over the week with each kid, spouse, you know, find out when meetings are occurring, find out what's going on, and try to get this schedule worked out individually and discuss, you know, the schedule, the goals for the week, etc. This will help you and your family stay on track. I can't really say enough about planning ahead. It's the key to any successful strategy during this time. Try to do as much pre-planning as you can, including preparing meals in advance, to try to lessen interruptions throughout the day, particularly if you know you're teleworking during the day and you're having to stop and do, you know, breakfast, you know, snacks and lunch and, you know, all of these things. Try to do some preparation in advance. That may help with time management. Also, there are a lot of online resources for all ages for project-based learning ideas, as well as apps and websites that can foster fun learning. You just have to find what works well for your child and holds their attention. And then you want to create fillers for your kids that help teach responsibility, like maybe making out a shopping list, or maybe meal planning, pantry inventory, household improvement, to-do lists, things that they can be involved in and they can sort of take advantage of. So from my research, here's a few things that other parents are doing now as they are trying to cope with this pandemic and with teleworking and everything. Tap into your community network. Although we all have varying levels of comfort with coming in contact with other people during this pandemic, most people have some comfort level with spending time outdoors or a small community group network. So parents are partnering up with other parents in their community to switch off with the kids. They line up outdoor time and educational time for the kids. Of course, they need to be sure to stick to social distancing guidelines, even when they're, outside. But it allows you, the parent, some alone time to get things done and maybe focus on areas when you can't really do that when everyone's in the house. So tapping into a small, trusted community network will help you remain productive while also keeping your mental health intact. Some parents who are working from home full-time are actually repositioning themselves to be closer to a support system, which may be family, friends, or colleagues that they trust with their kids. And in some cases, that means uprooting from their home and going elsewhere. I have been on conference calls and I've talked with, employers and employees, and I'm surprised by the number of people who have pretty much uprooted themselves to get to a closer support system that can help with their children. So that is definitely an option that a lot of parents are considering, particularly if they are working from home full time. And they don't need to go into the office. And if they have kids that are school age and are even attending virtually, they can still do it. Parents are also creating pandemic or learning pods within their networks where they actually hire an educator to teach their kids. The option may not be actually work financially for everyone, but parents are definitely thinking outside the box and strategizing with what is going to work best for them. New research polling, in a poll of about 2,000 parents recently of school-age children, found that 4 in 5 parents have thought about homeschooling their little ones for the upcoming school year. And almost 43% are seriously considering the option of homeschooling their children for the 2020-2021 school year. So I know that many of you are probably hearing the buzz about this. And I've been on lots of webinars and calls where parents are providing resources and additional information about networks that are helping them figure out how they can do some homeschooling for their children. So, as kids are preparing to return to school virtually, many parents are skeptical about the quality of education that their child is going to receive with online learning. And so they're looking at virtual tutoring to supplement their child's learning experience. And I realize that, quite a few of these options, some of these options may not work for everyone. But, at this time, I want to really open it up to the audience. And I want to talk about some of the tips that you all may have, best practices that you all have found, because, all of us have different age groups in terms of the age of our kids. And I want to hear from some of you parents about what's working and what's, what you're doing that you can share in terms of how you're juggling telework and parenting. So we can unmute your phones and you all can chime in. Don't be shy.
Susana Parker here. My son is thankfully back in daycare now, but when we first started, my husband and I would just essentially split the day. So he would be in charge from 9 a.m. until our son's nap time at midday. We'd both have lunch together while our son was napping, and then I'd take over when he got up around 2. So we were able to each get about 5 solid hours of work in during the workday, and then catch up on stuff after our son went to bed in the evening.
That's great. And that's a great process. And that seems to be working pretty well for you all.
It did. I mean, like I said, thankfully his little in-home daycare is open again. But
Mhm.
you know, we get a surge in the fall and have to have him back home for a while, we'll definitely be doing that again because it gives us good big chunks of time where we can just work uninterrupted while the other parent is parenting.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
This is Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi, can you hear me? I would kind of echo that. I was really trying to do it all myself at home when this started. And then I did kind of give in, and I found my friend's son was looking for something to do. He was finished with school. And so I had him just babysit for 3 hours. And it was kind of like, I felt like I have 2 kids. One's, she just turned 10, and then one is 4. And I really felt like I needed to be doing something with them, or they just got into things, no matter what kind of projects I gave. And so having that 3 hours, I could kind of give them something to do in the morning. He came at 10, he did 10 to 1. And then they came and had lunch and then a quiet time. I felt like that gave me something.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was kind of all things kind of got a little crazy again, but it did give me that time to focus. And I just tried to plan accordingly to do that stuff that really required me to focus during that time when I had some help. Unfortunately, he's gone back to college, so I've got to figure something else out now.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Okay. So I will share that my kids are a little bit older. I have a rising 10th grader and a college freshman. And, you know, even at that age, we still struggle. They don't need supervision constantly. But one of the things that's worked for us really, as I mentioned before, was that Sunday's overview schedule. That has worked really well as we sort of try and sit down and figure out what is going on, what do we have going on for the week, you know, who needs to be where and what do we need to do. So planning ahead has really worked, particularly for older children. And you know, just really trying to talk things out because, and even with my husband who also works from home, we have to have that conversation actually every day in the morning because we share office space and it's important for us to know what's going on. So that's definitely, the planning ahead has definitely helped us as well. All right. So I want to move sort of into our next segment of the webinar on telework best practices. And because I believe that this pandemic really has fundamentally changed the way in which we will work in this country forever. You know, you probably have heard that companies like Twitter have announced that they're going to allow their employees to work remotely permanently. And I want to share some stats from Global Workplace Analytics, which is a research firm. And before the pandemic, surveys showed that 8% of employees were actually interested in working from home at least some of the time, and over a third would take a pay cut in exchange for the option. They also estimated that 56% of the workforce holds a job that is compatible with remote work, yet only 3.6% of the workforce worked at home half-time or more. There are now estimating that 25 to 30% of the workforce will be working from home multiple days a week by the end of 2021. And so for some, you know, companies, telework will now become an integral part of their business model, and more employees than ever will be teleworking in some capacity. And so while telework is first and foremost a business strategy for companies, there are certainly benefits that extend to employees. So despite what some may think, there really is life outside of work. And so the ability to better balance work demands with everything else that we have going on in our lives is really important. So there was a study conducted by the Journal of Applied Communication Research that found that teleworking, the majority of the time, alleviates forms of stress and distraction, including acting as a buffer from workplace injustice, which may provide a more productive and satisfying work environment. So part of job satisfaction also stems from the ability to better balance work and life. So in the event of a disaster like this pandemic, or as we're in, employees really want to continue to work, but in as safe of an environment as possible. Telework allows the ability to be able to do that. And while increased productivity is certainly a benefit to the employer, it's also beneficial to the employee, because if we can get more things off of our to-do list more efficiently, then it helps to alleviate that pressure. The number one benefit that was cited in the survey that we've been seeing from most of our employees and over the years, really, that benefit is cost savings. Global workplace statistics indicate that employees who work remotely half of the time can save $2,500 to $4,000 a year. That's considered almost a raise. You can double those numbers in a full-time remote work situation where you're likely saving your money in terms of where this savings is coming from is gas, car maintenance, dry cleaning, laundry, lunch and coffee, and buying professional clothing. All of these things add up to added cost savings for the employee. So before we get into best practice details, I really want to address some of the most important tips that can make or break your telework experience. If you're like many of us, you might still, even though we've been at this for 6 months, still be fighting the fact that your environment has changed and you probably don't have everything at home that you're accustomed to having at the office, and your coworkers aren't there. Many of us really miss our coworkers. Some of you may not. But the first thing that we really need to do is take a step back and accept the fact that this is the new norm for now and embrace telework. Holding on really to the way that things were is counterproductive at this point. Even though we've been at this for a while, you may not have taken the time to actually organize your new environment to help you be more productive. You may be working from, a laptop that, was issued to you that's new. There might be information that needs to be organized and files and workspace things that need to be taken care of efficiently. And we'll talk about a little bit more of that later. But it's important to take the time to really get organized. This will help you overall in your telework experience. Studies have shown the benefits of being organized really improves your sleep, reduces stress, improves your relationships, reduces depression, and makes you more productive. And so the other thing I want to remind everyone of is that some of you may be working with sensitive and secure data that you need to protect and keep confidential. After we've been doing this for some time, like 6 months or so, sometimes we tend to get a little lackadaisical, let our guards down. Please remember to follow your agency or company protocols for protecting that data and to do it consistently. You may be required to lock your laptop when you step away, or other protocols. So make sure you're doing that even in this teleworking environment, particularly in this teleworking environment. So many people are reporting back problems and neck issues and all of these things that they're experiencing since they've been teleworking, related ergonomic issues since they've been working from home. I want you to take a look at how you're sitting right now. Let's go through these. You want to make sure that you keep your head aligned, not stretching your neck. Your eyes should be looking straight ahead. This is helpful certainly on video conference calls, as well as to align your eyes with the camera. Sit as far, I was just thinking, I had to share this quick story with you guys. I was on a conference call for my daughter's principal, has a weekly call now as they're gearing up to get back to high school. And there was some person that was on the Zoom call, and the whole time, the only thing we could see was the top of her head, like her hair and her scalp. And it was like, what is happening? So just some etiquette, just make sure that you're aligned with the camera if you're on camera and you're looking at the camera. So you want to sit as far from the screen as possible. Shoulders should always be in a relaxed position. Your keyboard should be seated at elbow height also when using a laptop. Wrists should be straight when typing. Your fingers should not be elevated or lower than your wrists. Your chair should be supporting the curve in your lower back. I use a lower back support pillow to help me with this. Your feet should be flat on the floor or on a footrest. And make sure that you get up and use take frequent breaks. Because for some of you, you may just tend when you work from home to stay seated and not get up and move around as much as you would if you were in an office. So make sure that you take the time to do that. And so some of you are working longer hours in those positions than you normally would in the office. And so it could be a combination of both, but it's just important to be cognizant of your posture as you're working. So IT issues have also been a very common theme since the pandemic. And while there are so many different IT issues that are unique to each individual, I want to provide some generic tips to help. You want to make sure that you communicate the issues you're having to management. Not that they can resolve the issue, but just so that they're aware that productivity might be impacted. You want to keep a log of the issues that you're having. This will be helpful if you have an opportunity to troubleshoot with an IT professional. If you're having issues with communication platforms or other apps, there are tons of online tutorials that you can access for free. There have been lots of complaints about bandwidth issues and slow networks, and that's because households have multiple people streaming, conferencing, kids are playing on devices, and it's taking its toll. But here are some suggestions that you can try maybe possibly for faster speed. Since the pandemic, many people have reported having inadequate dedicated workspace. So I want to talk about building your dream office. I realize that we're dealing with the hand that we've been dealt here, but if telework continues in some capacity in the future for you, this can certainly be part of your aspirations as you're trying to figure out exactly what you will need for this permanent type of situation as far as teleworking in some capacity. In your technology toolkit, we're assuming that your internet is set up, is in place. You'll certainly need your laptop or desktop. However, adding a second monitor or multi-display is preferable, and it can really help you work more efficiently. You'll need your phone, whether work issued or personal, and it's helpful to have headphones with a microphone, particularly if you have issues with the sound on your device. Headphones can help you project more clearly on conference calls so that you don't sound muffled or far away, particularly if your laptop tends to make you sound that way. It's also a good idea to have a privacy screen for added security in case you need it. For furniture, you want a desk certainly that fits with the room size, but has enough space for you to work effectively. A comfortable chair, as we've already mentioned, is very important, but it needs to support your lower back. All of your other supplies that you may want or may need, like maybe a small filing cabinet or a scanner, should be added to your list. On to space. The best option is a separate area with a door to maximize privacy. You want a window for natural light if possible. Research has proven that natural lighting helps people to be more productive, happier, healthier, calmer, boosts vitamin D, and can help ward off seasonal depression. You also want to add an indirect lighting source to ensure that you have adequate and functional lighting in your workspace. Consider the placement of your light to avoid casting shadows on your desk and make sure that you're not working under the direct glare of overhead lights. You want to add indoor live plants because they don't just spruce up the decor, but studies have shown that they clean indoor air by absorbing toxins, increasing humidity, and producing oxygen. They can also boost mood, productivity, concentration, and creativity while reducing stress, fatigue, sore throats, and colds. Since you'll spend a good amount of time in this area, you want to try and transform it to your happy place by adding decor that you like and enjoy. Some people like to add stress balls or things that they can take their mind off of work for just a minute. Some like, fountains because they like the sound of water and soothing. But you also want to boost your concentration in a way that works for you. I like to work in silence. I can focus and I can concentrate better on getting things accomplished. This has been a real challenge for me because with my kids invading my quiet time and my husband working from home, I don't have a lot of that anymore. So I have had to really focus on concentrating because I'm not accustomed to, I've been working from home by myself for many years. And so I'm not accustomed to having all of that noise when I'm working during the day. But for some people, the silence is just drives you crazy. And so you might not want to work in silence. You might have to play music or have the TV playing in the background or something. The bottom line is there are no wrong answers for what boosts your concentration because everyone is different. But you just need to find what works best for you that's going to maximize your concentration in a teleworking environment. The key in all of this is comfort. Studies have shown that when people are comfortable, morale increases and productivity as well. The reason that I didn't put a picture of an ideal home office is because one size doesn't fit all. And at the end of the day, design your workspace to work for you. If that looks completely different for you and you have your work couch and your laptop and you're happy, then so be it. So whenever you have an opportunity to use communication tools, you want to do so to increase comfort levels. Instead of maybe just doing a phone conference call, play around with all of the options that you have, like virtual backgrounds and when you're on virtual calls and using different platforms. Participating in virtual team building activities that your organization may have or other groups may have. A lot of families are doing virtual happy hours and gatherings and virtual fitness sessions. It will increase your comfort levels. Be sure to log on early to new or different platforms that you don't use often to make sure that you test your microphone, your speakers, etc. And I want to reiterate the use of online tutorials to learn more because there's so much out there that you can access on the internet. And so many of us are reporting increased anxiety and mental health issues. We are working and trying to maintain productivity, but we are on edge. We're trying to manage our new levels of anxiety. We're trying to manage the things that are going on with our family and our children. And this is affecting everyone in different ways. Even if you set aside the anxiety associated with the pandemic, many of us are finding that working from home presents a new set of stress factors. Social isolation, lack of structure you're used to when going into the office, difficulty setting boundaries and knowing when to unplug from work, increased use of mobile devices from working longer hours, which increases stress, and for some, having to troubleshoot technology issues at home by yourself can increase stress levels. So first thing you want to do is make sure that you step away by taking morning, afternoon, and lunch breaks, particularly during this time, but just like you would do in the office. You want to keep a schedule, have a designated start and end time, and try really hard not to work beyond your designated hours for your mental health. And you want to stay connected with others. Social distancing and working remotely can really leave us feeling disconnected from everyone. Maximizing the use of your communication tools is helpful. And you want to make sure that you get enough rest. Take care of yourself. Eat well-balanced meals. Try to get some form of exercise in. And you want to make time for enjoyment. Whatever it is that you like to do that doesn't violate, our guidelines or, social distancing issues right now, make time to do that. And if you're really struggling with mental health issues, you want to seek help and support. The CDC and local behavioral health departments have 24-hour helplines and guidance to deal with emotional health resources and managing stress. So part of what's contributing to our stress are all of the distractions that we're dealing with when we're trying to work at home. Those include all of the childcare issues and distractions that we have there. But, most of us have a laundry list of those distractions. And we could name them all. But the first thing that we need to do is realize that, as I mentioned earlier, they're not going away. So we have to take them seriously and we have to find a way to overcome them. And the first step in doing that is to identify your specific distraction, because what might be a distraction to you might not be one for others. So out of all of your distractions, you want to pick one just for the purpose of this exercise that we'll do. And so I'll use a distraction, and I have quite a few of them, but I'll use the distraction of my husband teleworking now, and we have the same office space. And we both have our own desk in the office, but he has conference calls, I have conference calls, we have situations where we're both on the phone at the same time. So I've had to come up with a strategy. So one of those, and I mentioned earlier today, part of my strategy was we chat first thing in the morning about our schedule so that we can plan ahead for those issues and make sure that there are no conflicts. And he also created a sign that we can hang up on the door for each other and for our kids, particularly for them. And that has worked really well. So basically it'll have video conferencing session, or, on a conference call or something like that. And the kids can come by and see, okay, she's on a call, he's on a call, and that has worked. So we have had to outline a strategy for all of our distractions, one by one, figuring out what can we do better. And so identify it, strategize, set the ground rules for what that's gonna be, assess them and adjust, because sometimes you'll create a strategy and it won't work, or it won't work as well as you thought. So go back to the drawing board, strategize again, set those ground rules, assess and adjust as you go along. Okay. So a couple of things I want to talk about with time management. We've already talked about building a workday routine, but it's really important to start at the same time if you can. Lunch at the same time, end at the same time. It will really help to keep you focused. You want to review your schedule to avoid those conflicts, as I mentioned earlier. And you want to, because of the flexibility of working at home, many of us like to work at home at various times, anytime, all the time. You may want to try to work primarily when your supervisor works or your coworkers, because this will eliminate unnecessary waiting for responses, collaborations, and decisions, and the team knows when you're available. You want to block your biggest online distractors. If there are social media outlets or websites that you frequent and you wonder after a while, where has the time gone? It is an online distractor that you have to manage. We just talked about pandemic-related household distractions. But what about those normal household distractions that you have when you telework, like folding that basket of laundry or washing those dishes? My recommendation is that if those household chores are a distraction to you during your workday, then in your morning break, fold that basket of laundry. At lunch, do those dishes, and then get back to work. So in a normal telework situation where you may work from home, once we transition back to the workplace, you may work from home 1 or 2 days a week only. And, you know, if you're doing that, you want to make sure that you do establish clear guidelines with family and friends, because once we get back into the workplace and you're home, people tend to sometimes think that your free day. They want you to pick little Johnny up from school because he's sick, or go to their house and wait for the repairman or internet provider to come. You want to set those guidelines early on with, you know, family, friends, and colleagues, to let them know that this is actually your telework day once you are back in the office. And before you get started for the day, take a moment to think about what's priority in today's workload. Are there any other ways that you can manage the workload more effectively? Use a telework task worksheet. There's nothing significant about this simple sheet. You can certainly use it in the office too, but the purpose is to utilize the power of making lists. It's one of the best ways to drive clarity and action. Try to do your challenging tasks when you're fresh. Your concentration and focus will be much better. When you find yourself wandering and lethargic, take a quick break and refocus. I've mentioned this before, but I can't really stress it enough, that you want to avoid overworking, as it's a common practice among teleworkers. You also want to avoid underworking and be sure that you're meeting the expectations with the hours that you work. There are also tons of apps that may help your time management skills and boost productivity. If you can make your calendar visible to your supervisor or coworkers, it will help everyone know what your schedule looks like for the day and when you're available. So we are now learning that face-to-face interaction is not always necessary to produce positive outcomes. But when we transition back into the office and we're teleworking part of the time, make sure that you create a seamless environment for your internal and external customers. They don't need to know where you're working. I know some people will make a message on their phone that says, I'm teleworking today. I don't recommend that you do that, because the bottom line is the customer just wants you to be responsive and they want you to handle the situation. So the onus is really on you to have the process in place to respond timely, whether your calls are forwarded or you're checking voicemail messages periodically. And definitely leverage the technology that you have access to. So here's some local telework resources that can help provide some resources to telework more effectively, because I know the Chesapeake chapter stretches across multiple areas. And so there's Commuter Choice in Maryland, Go DC Go in Washington, DC, and Telework Virginia in Virginia. And so I want to talk briefly a little bit more about Telework Virginia, because I'm familiar with that program. It's a wonderful program provided by the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. It is a statewide initiative, and it offers free technical assistance to implement or expand telework. And the goal is to help organizations, particularly during this pandemic, to implement sustained telework programs going forward. Everyone by now has experienced teleworking and is trying to make the best of this situation. But the Telework VA program can really help your organization figure out where those missing pieces are, maximize the impact of your telework program, help you to develop the telework policies and agreements if you don't have those in place, evaluate and identify those positions that are suited for telework going forward in a sustained situation. Assist with the technology plan, and most importantly, train managers and employees for a teleworking environment, and train them to be as effective as possible as teleworkers. So I want to thank the ACT Chesapeake chapter for this platform to share. And I want to thank all of the participants today for your time and attention. And I think that we have a few minutes for some questions.
Robin, on the chat, Kay had asked, what sort of incentives or rewards would you suggest for a fifth grader?
Oh, wow. Yeah, so it depends on your fifth grader, first of all. But, I think that you can think about some of the things that your fifth grader enjoys, and I think you can sort of make that go across different categories, so it may mean that, maybe there's a movie or something that they might want to, rent on Netflix, or maybe there's some type of meal that they enjoy that you fix for them or something. I think it could vary. It could be anything. But, I think that incentive and reward part of this is important, for our kids, because it's tough. What they're going through is really tough right now. And so if there's any way that we can try to make it easier for them, we should try.
Thank you, Robin. This is Kay. And when I asked that question, I was thinking about some of the things that I do right now. For example, he loves Five Guys cheeseburgers.
Okay.
But I can only take him there so often.
Yeah, because they're $10 a burger for one.
It's just that in school that they have a lot of different little incentives.
Yeah.
A clipboard where you go up the ladder, and I'm trying to think of ideas to bring to the home classroom, not the typical ones that I've used in parenting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's something to think about. My kids are much older, so I haven't had to think through the process of a reward for fifth grader. But if any other parents out there have some suggestions, definitely share. I think
like a sticker chart with fun stickers that he could earn, or like a popsicle stick jar where good behavior popsicle sticks get added to the jar, and once he hits a certain amount, then he gets like the big Five Guys burger and milkshake reward.
Yeah, I have these there's always these coupon books for different types of things that you can give to kids. Like this one says, hiking, fishing, exploring, whatever you like. But I mean, you can find ones that have, ones that are going to be relevant and that'll work for what you're doing. So.
Okay, we did have another question on the chat from Brandon. Advice for first-time parents with child on the way, navigating this new reality.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I would say, and it's been a while for me, but I think the main thing when that child comes, obviously that's going to be your first priority, is trying to figure out what you need to do and how to get in that rhythm. And it's going to take some time, definitely, to get into that rhythm with the child on the way. And once you do that, you'll be in a better predicament, and to certainly depend on both parents to try to help with that situation. But it's going to take some time. It'll be a while before you get into your groove, for sure. One thing I'll just say, which is not even related to telework, but sleep when they sleep.
I agree with that one too.
And it's so funny. They don't, the first child I had, I did everything by the book. I woke up every 2 hours, fed the child. The next one, it was like, she'll wake me when she's ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Kendall in Frederick County, Maryland. I would just like to say I definitely agree with talking to your supervisor. When this first started, we have he's going to be 16 months soon, but when this started, he was just under a year. And my husband and I had a meeting conflict time. So I would try to, do childcare and do the meeting, and it was just chaos. And when I talked to my supervisor, he was like, "Oh, we can totally change this time. It's not a problem at all." So I would certainly you know, talk to
Exactly.
your supervisor, let them know what's going on, especially you, Brandon, with, you know, just be open and communicate. So it makes a big difference. Thankfully, my supervisor has young kids too, so he understands. But those who don't have young kids in the house anymore, I think they need to, you know, come back and understand what you're going through. So communication is huge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of folks are finding that once they have that conversation, you know, that they may be making the situation more difficult than it needs to be. And you know, some supervisors may not be as empathetic, but most tend to be willing to work with staff. So great comment. Thank you, Kendall.
I have a question about the educational standards. We're in California, and we just started today with virtual school with a commitment all year, rather than the hybrid model going back and forth. And one of my biggest concern is with the virtual schooling, whether the standards are going to be somewhat lowered, because it's really hard to implement the state testings and all other products that they normally do when you're in the brick and mortar model. And is there a way, a resource that I can go to see where, you know, where a fifth grader should be in ELA and science and social studies, and something that is not from the school district itself, because that's going to be biased?
Mm-hmm.
What resources do I have to verify that and see on my own how he's doing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't have an answer for you, because I think that these educational standards, some of them certainly will vary from state to state, but I think if you check and what I can do, I think that there is, so there's your normal state, like Department of Education, but I know you're saying that typically that those guidelines are what they're gonna provide, you know, as you were mentioning, that's gonna be what they're requiring. But yeah, you're gonna have to do a little bit of research on that to find those guidelines and what those requirements. I think they start though with that State Department. I don't know, any other comments from any other
At the
parents?
Department of Education, at the State Department?
Yep.
I mean, State Department of Education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The State Department, whatever state you're in, would probably be the place to start, I think.
Okay, it's 3:01, so we're really out of time, everyone. We thank you so much for being here. Robin, thank you so much for your time and your presentation. We will have this on our website in the next day or so. Thank you again for everyone attending this, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.